Hello, welcome to a brand new day of free-to-play here on Magic the Gathering Real Life. Get the dish on the latest with me, Lord Rumfish. I made an entire Magic set, 281 cards, called Wastes of Veldmar. For fun, just for entertainment. And if you missed the first several videos, I introduced the color factions, the rules primer, and we've been through white, blue, and black. Now it's time to go into red. Let's just kick it off with Artificer's Insights. This is a red and a colorless sorcery. It is uncommon. You may destroy up to one target artifact. If you don't, banish two. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards. So this is modal, basically. You can destroy an artifact, or you can use it as a red draw two. And it's until the end of your next turn, so it'd be a little bit cruel to make it a sorcery and only until the end of the current turn. So yeah, this is it's a playable card. It's a little bit slow, you know, as a sorcery, but there's a good number of artifacts to target in this set, so I'm pretty sure this will be pretty highly playable. Consortium Ether Reshaper. So this is the red mana filter creature. We get a 2/2 for 2. When it enters the battlefield, you draw a card and banish one. And she can pay one to add black or red. So, as I said before, there's one of these for each of the consortium colors. The ones that bookend where green would be, that's white and red. They don't make green mana because this is the consortium. And the consortium doesn't use green mana. So the two on the ends only make two of the colors, right, for their allied colors. The ones in the middle make three colors. If you're interested, the ones on the ends actually have an extra point of power and toughness compared to the ones in the middle. But either way, they're all playable 2-drops that draw you a card when they enter the battlefield. So they are all going to serve you well in this draft environment. And they're probably constructed playable. We have a rare. This is Consortium Mana Surge. Red and 2 colorless sorcery. You add white, blue, black, red. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So this is a good old-fashioned, just mana ramp spell. Kind of in the vein of like Seething Song, Dark Ritual, all of that jazz. This one makes the colors of the consortium. It only gets you 1 mana higher, but it does fix your mana to get access to all the consortium colors. And it replaces itself, but not immediately. So you could use it in a storm deck, in the old Eternal formats, but it's not going to replace itself with a card draw on the turn that you're actually storming off. So you can net mana from it, but not the card. Overall, I think it's going to be a good playable card. Every mana ramp card like this that's ever been printed has some level of playability. So I imagine this one will too. Somewhere. Disrupt Mana. So this is 1 red. It is an uncommon sorcery. Tap target land and put 2 stun counters on it. So this is a sideways kind of land destruction where you're taxing the opponent's resources, right? It's almost like a tempo play version of land destruction, where you're not actually blowing up the land. You're just denying them access to it for a little while. I thought for 1 red mana, this would probably be, a reasonable way to try to tax the opponent without actually giving you land destruction at 1 red, because 1 mana land destruction would probably be a bit busted. Dwarven Toymaker. This is a 2/1 common for 2 mana. Dwarf Artificer. Tap, discard a card at random, create a 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature token. I know no one loves random discards, but I had a sneaking suspicion this card might be too good, at least in the draft environment. If you got to discard just, any card you want, and that was the only cost that you paid with this at instant speed to activate it. With the random discard, I'm a little bit more comfortable with it. And obviously, when you get down to like one card in hand, you know what you're going to discard. So at that point, it's just like it would have been otherwise. Also, this card is alluding back to Dwarven Armorer from Fallen Empires, just as a little fun nod. Extreme Measures. This is a red and a colorless. It's an instant. As a common, target creature gets +3/+0 and gains trample until end of turn. If that creature dies this turn, create a trash token. So, it's pretty good all the way around. 3 power pump plus trample is a pretty mean combat trick. And the creature is fairly likely to die. The opponent's probably lined up blocks where they would normally kill your creature. Which means you're going to get paid back a trash token. And if you're in like one of the Artifact Matters type of decks, then you're going to get extra mileage out of that. Fuel Blast. So this is a common red instant, 2 mana. Fuel Blast deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker. You may banish 4. If you do, it deals 4 damage instead. So this goblin with a flamethrower, basically if you banish 4, that's like you're burning up extra fuel out of the fuel tank to make a giant blast of fire. This is a pretty efficient, common removal spell. When you can get away with it, you'll be happy to just use the 2 damage version of it. When you really need to, you can crank it up. Giant's Maul. This is an uncommon artifact, 2 mana, equipment. Equipped creature gets +4/+2 and trample. It equips for 4 colorless. So, it's not a complicated piece of equipment, but in a slower format, like this one, things that can give you an onboard constant source of advantage where you're like turning every creature into a must-kill threat, that kind of thing can totally change the game in your favor. Doesn't help as much when you're behind. Maybe if you stabilize, you could equip this onto the creature that's helping to stabilize you, like a big reach creature or something. And now it's so much bigger, the opponent has even more trouble killing it. But this is great at breaking a position of parity, where you've got a board stalemate. This coming down is going to break up that stalemate. You're going to be able to start crashing in with the littlest creatures you got as like 5 power tramplers. Golem Crafter. This is a common. It's a 2/3/4/3 Dwarf Artificer. You tap, sacrifice 3 artifacts, create a 3/3 colorless golem artifact creature token. Activate this ability only as a sorcery. So this one requires a heavy commitment to the artifact theme. It's part of the Roka guild, which is actually a guild. Some of them are different names. Roka is a guild. And Roka wants you to have just as many artifacts as you possibly can. And if you have set up a critical mass of that stuff for that deck, then yeah, this can help change out all of your trash and food and blood tokens and stuff into 3/3s. There's even some other cards in Roka that can turn golems into other things, so they can create kind of a pyramid effect where eventually you're like pulling out an artifact creature from your library for free. But if you're not in the right deck, it's a pretty forgettable card. You really need to be able to activate it at least once to really say that you got mileage out of it. Impetuous Goblin. This is a 1 red 1/2 Goblin Berserker. It's a rare. It has haste. Whenever one or more cards are exiled from your library, Impetuous Goblin gets +1/+1 until end of turn. So, instead of having prowess, this goblin effectively has like banish prowess. It doesn't trigger for each individual card you exile from the library, but every time that you exile one or more. So, if you can stack them up as separate triggers, the goblin could get really big. In draft, it might not be that great. In constructed, it's probably some scary things you could do with it. Inferno Dragon. So this is a 7/7 flying trampling dragon at rare for 7. When Inferno Dragon dies, it deals 6 damage to each creature and each planeswalker, which is a nod back to the original card Inferno. Inferno did creatures and players. Dragon, I decided to shift it over to planeswalkers instead. So that's good. It's a good big dragon. Does something useful even when it dies. I mean, that didn't save the Kamigawa dragons, but I think it could be useful. I don't know if it actually sees play in Standard, but there will probably be some format like Commander or something else that'll make room for it. Jealous Dragon. This one's a mythic. So we have a 6/5 flying haste trample dragon for 6. Whenever Jealous Dragon deals combat damage to a player, that player banishes that many cards. Until the end of your next turn, you may play those cards, and you may spend mana or mana of any type to cast those spells. So yeah, if this dragon connects with your opponent, you're gonna get, I wouldn't say a fistful of cards, but an exile full of cards that you're able to play. And it comes out with haste, so that increases the odds of you actually connecting and doing the thing, which is pretty exciting. Red's been getting these effects a little bit more often. I could point to a couple. Let's see, in Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, there was a red card called, Break the Chains, where you could destroy an artifact or take the top 3 of the opponent's library, play them until the end of the next turn. And there's a red enchantment in a recent set. It's a saga where you make a couple of treasure and then you exile the top 3 of the opponent's library and you can play them. Anyway, Jealous Dragon has this effect. I think it's going to be pretty fun. Doesn't necessarily get there in constructed, but it could. Junkhorde Dragon. This is an uncommon. We got a 5/4 flyer for 7 mana. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice an artifact. If you do, it deals 3 damage to any target and you draw a card. That's a pretty good ETB trigger. So you get a big flying dragon, and you get to bolt something and draw a card, as long as you can sacrifice an artifact. Probably doesn't get there in constructed, but it's a very solid card for limited. Maddening Lore. This is a common red sorcery for 5. Discard 2 cards at random, then draw 3 cards. This card is for Quel'Nai College. Quel'Nai College is all about drawing cards, and this gets you 3 card draws all at once, all in one turn. And if you get to the point that you have 2 or less cards in hand, you know exactly what you're discarding. It doesn't have to be anything, right? It's not an additional cost to cast the spell. So if you have no cards in hand, then this will just draw you 3. You know, some colors like blue and black and stuff can maybe do better, but this is pretty good for red. And it's pretty good for Quel'Nai College in limited. Orc Charger, 4/3 for 4. Uncommon, haste, and trample. And that's it. I still think it's probably a solid playable card. And if you were doing a budget deck, right? If you were, let's say the set was on Arena, you were just starting off, you don't have a lot of rares and stuff yet. There are better 4-drop rares if you want 4-drops in your aggro deck, but this is just an uncommon. This could get you started like pretty close to 8 o'clock day one on an aggro deck. And the same would be true in paper. It's a budget option that you can replace later when you have better cards. And as far as limited, yeah, this thing's gonna beat down. Orc Stoneseeker. This is a 3/3 for 3. It's an uncommon Orc Ranger in red. She's got reach, and whenever she enters the battlefield, banish cards until you reveal a mountain, and put that card into your hand. And I've been talking about this with the other colors. I think every color in Magic has the right to find its own basics, not put them directly onto the battlefield, but just to find them. The red has had this effect before. Koth, I think both versions of Koth fetch up mountains. So black's done it, red's done it, white's been doing it a long time. So I think it's pretty reasonable to just allow this in the other colors as just a way to find your land drop in your color. Quelnai Protester. So we've got a 2/2 for 3 Goblin Wizard at uncommon. Quelnai Protester has first strike during your turn. And Quelnai Protester gets +X+0, where X is how many cards you've drawn this turn. So this one plays right into the card draw theme of Quelnai. And that is green, red, blue. So if you're doing the thing, then this is one of the payoff cards. You get a giant first striker who can crash in. This would be a good candidate to put that hammer on. +4/+2 and trample. Let's go. Ready for War. This is a 4-mana enchantment in red. It's mythic. At the beginning of your instep, banish 3, then draw a card, create a 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature token, and create a treasure token. That's a lot. So let's break it down here. Red already has token generators in the format. Right, there's a 4-mana red enchantment from one of the Innistrad sets. It puts out a 1/1 every turn. If you get to 13 permanents, you can sacrifice it and deal 7 damage to any target. It's already got that card. So making treasure every turn, that's pretty nice. There are cards and ways that red can do this kind of thing as well. And then drawing cards, just straight up drawing cards. Recently, red has had some access to things that can sacrifice a land or sacrifice an artifact to draw extra cards. In this case, what we're paying, the thing that we're paying with is the library. We're doing a banish 3, and that's happening every instep. Right, so once you've used this thing for 4 turns, you've gone through 12 cards of your library. It's nothing that you're paying. You need to close out the game. You need to figure things out. But overall, generates a ton of value. I think it should be a good, useful card. Rock Oracle. This is a 1/3 Dwarf Wizard at common for 2. You can tap, discard a card, and draw a card. Just nice and simple. Just a rummager. Not much to say here other than, this is a great effect to have in just about any deck. Quelnai College will especially love this card for being able to trigger more card draws. Rockbreaker. So this is a 6/6 giant warrior for 6. It's an uncommon, it has reach and trample, and it can tap to sacrifice a land named Wastes or Snow-Covered Wastes, and it deals 4 damage to any target. So this is a payoff card for running Wastes in your deck. It's something you could do in maybe a sideways draft, where instead of trying to go like 4-color or whatever, you just say, I'm gonna take all the payoff cards for Wastes, and not go so many colors this time. Because this already being like a 6/6 reach trampler for 6 is a great body on the field. And then its tap ability is nuts. It's so good in Limited. So yeah, if you can run this guy with like added upside, then that's going to be amazing for you. Roka Bombardment. This is an uncommon enchantment. It's 4 mana in red. Whenever one or more artifacts enters the battlefield under your control, Roka Bombardment deals 1 damage to target opponent. So all your trash tokens, blood tokens, food tokens, etc., little constructs and such, all of that is pinging the opponent's life total, as long as you've got this out. There are a lot of ways to do it, so if you've got a critical mass of that kind of stuff, this could absolutely be a win condition for your deck. I don't think you take cards like this highly. They require so much synergy. You wait until later in the draft when you know that you can support it, that you can win by this method. Obviously, you could also try to build a constructed deck around it. That could be fun. Roka Factory. So we've got an artifact. It's 1 red, it's a rare. Beginning of your end step, banish 1, then create a 1/1 colorless construct artifact creature token. So we've got another token producer here. And artifact creatures you control have menace. So that can impact the board right away. There aren't just token artifact creatures, there are also, some cardboard, so to speak, artifact creatures. So you get like a Goblin War Drums effect for your artifact creatures right off the bat. And then you also get additional 1/1s. And it keeps banishing. Should be a great card for Limited. Constructed, maybe. There's that blue artifact that whenever you play an artifact that costs 3 mana or more, you get like a construct that's got power and toughness equal to the number of artifacts you control. Giving that thing menace would be pretty good, and putting out a 3 mana artifact that makes additional artifacts would be pretty good. Yeah, seems like it could work. Roka Salvo. This is an uncommon instant for 3. Roka Salvo deals damage to target battle, creature, or planeswalker equal to 2 plus the number of artifacts you control. At a baseline, it deals 2 damage for 3 mana at instant speed. That's not great, but you'd occasionally find something to kill. But once you've got a couple of artifacts in play, it becomes a great kill spell. As a side note, I didn't design any battles for this set. I felt like I had bitten off as much as I wanted to chew with the design already, so I didn't opt to go for double-faced cards. Maybe next time. Scrapyard Brawl. This is a 3 mana instant. It's an uncommon. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. Create a trash token. It's pretty simple. Gives you more material on the board. There are color groupings and such that care about that. And as whether your deck wants a +2/+0 at instant speed, that's something you gotta decide for yourself. You have to decide how aggressive your deck is, if it's a worthy combat trick, etc. Sifting Giant. So this is a 5/4 giant archer with reach for 5 mana. It's common. She also has, whenever you discard a card, you may pay 1. If you do, create a trash token. So this card synergizes really nicely with the cards that discard stuff. So, you know, if you're rummaging, or if you've got, say, the white card, where if you discard, you make a 3/3 golem, there are synergies that you can run into here, where the Sifting Giant can be making you a bunch of trash, and then all of that trash can be helping out your artifact synergies. So, not just a big dumb idiot, but also a pretty good big dumb idiot. Spark of Defiance. This is a 3-mana sorcery. It's uncommon. Untap target creature and gain control of it until end of turn. That creature gains haste until end of turn if you controlled any trash tokens. When you cast this spell, that creature gets +2/+0 and menace until end of turn. So, a little bit of synergy with trash tokens. Otherwise, it's like a threaten. Again, if you whether or not you think a threaten is good for your deck, that depends on how aggressive you are. Threatens are terrible when you're behind. I don't love them, but here is one for the set, and it's got kind of a story beat moment captured on the art and the flavor text. Successful Explorer. We have a 2/1 for 2. It's an uncommon, Human Scout. When Successful Explorer enters the battlefield, banish 1 and create a treasure token. And that's it. It's pretty straightforward, but that is a good, solid, playable, at least in Limited, maybe in Constructed too. Just being able to get ahead on mana, to ramp, to fix your mana, get artifact synergies, and it's a 2-power body for 2. All the way around, playable card. Time-wasting Warlock. This guy might turn a few heads. There's a 1/1 for 1 red. He's a common, Human Warlock. Tap, banish 7. Time-wasting Warlock deals 1 damage to any target. Yeah, I did it. I took Prodigal Sorcerer and I knocked 2 mana off the cost. And all you have to do to get that reduced cost is every time you activate it to ping, you gotta exile the top 7 cards of your library. In Limited, I feel like you might get 2 pings out of this, if they're really impactful. Otherwise, it's probably just a 1/1 for 1. In Constructed, you can probably afford to be more aggressive with 60 cards. This is a card that I felt like could see play in Eternal formats. You know, this is the kind of card that could maybe find a home in like Vintage or Legacy. Because it can do so much up front. Now, it doesn't have haste. You got a chance to respond to it. And even once you start activating it, you know, they add up. 3 activations and you've been through 21 cards. That's not nothing. But ideally, you would have a deck where sometimes you can just attack with it. Right, clear out the blockers and just get in for combat damage. And when you really need to, you could activate it to do the ping. So, I'm not sure how good this is. It could possibly be too good. But I'm willing to test it and see what happens. Unnatural Heat. This is a 6-mana instant at common in red. Art has Veladra Orusanil again. This deals 6 damage to target battle, creature, or planeswalker. Draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. So if you've been following along with me, you recognize there is a cycle. There's a cycle, they're not all the same mana cost. You know, they kind of range like 5 and 6 mana, that sort of thing. Of some big removal spells down at common that can blow something up, and draw a card at the beginning of the next turn's upkeep. And they're all pretty good, because this is a slow format. At least I think it is. And that should mean that all of these, you have the time to get the mana to draw the card. Void Spike. This is 1 red, it's an instant, it's a common. Void Spike deals 2 damage to any target. If you control a land named Wastes or Snow-Covered Wastes, surveil 2. So, totally playable as a shock. And is completely fine in that mode. But, you also get a surveil 2 if you control a Wastes. And that is a very nice upside to have. It's not necessary, this card's good enough on its own for sure, but it's a really nice upside. So, just pretty good all the way around. Probably could make some splash in Constructed if anyone can figure out how to shove a Wastes or 2 into a deck. Wandering Giant. This is the vanilla creature of red. And this one's got a really relevant stat line, I feel like, for this format. A 5/6 for 6. You know, there are better cards even within this format, which is a good learning tool for new players. You know, like, a new player could see a card like this first and say, whoa, this is cool. Then later they see the uncommon that can, like, sacrifice Wastes, and it's like a 6/6 with trample and reach. Like, whoa, this is even better. It's a useful tool for new players. But yeah, I think this is going to be limited playable for this format. I think it's going to be pretty good. Waste Raider. This is an Orc Berserker. It's a 3/2 for 3 mana and common. It has haste if you can control a land named Wastes or Snow-Covered Wastes, and whenever it becomes blocked, you create a trash token. The trash token thing happens even if you don't have a waste. It just gains haste if you have a waste. That rhymes. So, if you have haste, it's pretty doggone good. If you don't have a waste, it's, you know, more marginal. At least it can generate, you know, like, extra artifacts and material for you in some way. So, not bad. Wasteland Witch. This is a common 4/4 for 4. It's a human warlock with menace. And when Wasteland Witch enters the battlefield, sacrifice a land and draw 2 cards. It is not a May ability. You must do it. I know this card doesn't look like much as a common, but little bit of story time. This is one of the earliest commons I designed for this set to try to capture the feel of how resources are finite and how life is difficult. And so this pretty good creature, right, that has a good effect stapled to it. Very often you do want to sacrifice a land and draw 2 cards, especially into the late game as flood insurance. That being said, it's not a May ability, so there's some tension to the card. And since I designed this card so early, I thought, you know, it would be terrible if I put this card in the set and it ended up underperforming, if it ended up being, like, not matching up well against the opponent's creatures and stuff. So somewhere in the back of my head, as I was designing this set, I actually kept this card in mind. Wasteland Witch. And if you see a whole bunch of things that have 4 toughness in the set, it's because somewhere I was thinking, you know, I want to keep this creature relevant. I want this creature to still have a good matchup against a lot of what's in this set. So I think this card is more likely to overperform for you rather than underperform, based on that it kept coming up in my mind as I was designing the set. Wheel of the Wastes. This is 7 mana. It's a rare sorcery. Each player discards cards equal to the number of lands you control named wastes and or snow-covered wastes, then draws that many cards. So this is a Wheel of Fortune. But instead of being tied to a specific number, it's tied, like discard your hand, draw 7 cards. This one varies based on the number of wastes that you have. So it could be, everyone discards 3 and draws 3. Or it could be that everyone discards 11 and draws 11. The card's variable. I probably padded the mana cost a little bit high because I was a little bit afraid of this card and what it could do. So at 7 mana, it's probably relegated to the realm of casual play, but still could do some impressive things. Wild Speculation. This is a 2 mana enchantment. It's a rare. Whenever you discard 1 or more cards, you may exile one of them from your graveyard. If you do, you may play it this turn. And that's got kind of some of that text that a couple of cards have had recently. There was a construct in Neon Dynasty that had this effect. There was a Conspiracy Theorist that also had this kind of effect recently. This one's on an enchantment. It also has the ability, pay red and 2 colorless, discard a card at random, draw a card. And normally random discards are painful, but a couple of things there. One, you get to play that card from the graveyard. So that could be added upside. For another, if it's the last card in your hand, it's not exactly random. At that point, you kind of know what's up. So, and then it triggers off of any discard, not just ones that came from this enchantment. So, this is a great one for Quelnai if you're in draft. But could have some interesting constructed applications as well. And finally, Wreck and Ruin. This is a common sorcery for 3 mana. Destroy target artifact or land, then create a trash token. Yes, my friends, land destruction is back. It fits very much with the themes of Veldmar. There's been so much, devastation of the land, of the natural world, that bringing back land destruction for a set like this feels right. And I'm always a big proponent of the idea that there should be play and counterplay within Magic. So if the opponent's lands are the problem, then you should have some way of dealing with it. You don't want to push the strategy too much, and I would say we've gone the opposite direction. We've gone to the extreme end of the scale where it's nigh impossible to remove the opponent's land, especially if it's a basic land. There are ways to blow up non-basics and then let them fetch basics to replace them. But traditional land destruction's been very absent. It's been relegated up to cards that cost 5 and 6 and 7 mana and such. So, welcome back, land destruction. You're welcome. That wraps it up for red. So join me next for green, and then we're going to get into the really spicy stuff where we look at multicolor, colorless, and lands. So like and subscribe, check out my other videos, helps out the channel a bunch. And until next time, never stop honing your critical thinking and empathy.